All right. Hey, how are you? Long time no see. Hello. How about now? Is it? I think. Can you hear it? My tinnitus is excellent. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. If you could please take a seat. If our panelists could please join us up here at the front. If you can hear me, clap your hands once. If you can hear me, clap your hands twice. If you're Stu Roth, clap your hands 3 times. Nice, way to go. All right, thank you. There are ample seats here in the front. If you would care to have a second or a third premier seat, we save them just for you. All right, thank you, everyone. All right, welcome to our Moss Landing lithium-ion battery energy storage system town hall meeting. I'd like to thank you all for joining us this evening. My name is Kelsey Scanlon. I'm the Director of Emergency Management for the County of Monterey. I'd like to remind everyone that if you have not done so, please sign in at the back and provide an email address if you would like to receive copies of some of the presentations via email. It also just generally helps us track who's asking questions, who would like follow-up information, etc. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge everyone up here at the front. We have representatives from, we actually have Supervisor Glenn Church, District 2 from Monterey County. We have Senator Laird here. Assemblymember Don Addis. We have Rick Encarnacion from Environmental Health. I don't believe we have anyone from Housing and Community Development here, but they're here in spirit. Chief Jason Smith from the Monterey County Sheriff's Office. Chief Joel Mendoza from North County Fire Protection District. And our partners from Pacific Gas and Electric and Vistra Energy Corporation. I would also like to take a moment for the county staff to raise their hands. If you work for the County of Monterey, please raise your hands. Excellent. These are all the people that are here to support you, answer questions, receive comments. So if you are not finding the answers from the panelists sufficient, feel free to find any one of the county staff members to continue to communicate or share additional commentary. I would also like to thank everyone for providing their comments in advance. If you did not have an opportunity to do so, District 2 is providing little cards for you to write your questions. So throughout the presentations, you can find the comment cards in the back near the exit, and you can fill out as many as you want. We won't be able to answer all of them if we inundate them with too many questions, but we'll try to prioritize them and consolidate if there's duplication of questions throughout the evening. And then finally, if you require Spanish translation, there are headphones in the back so that you can receive that service. She's waving her hand in the back. Excellent. And with that, we will get this evening's agenda started. And at first, I'd like to bring up Supervisor Glenn Church for opening comments.
Thank you, Kelsey. Don't want to get too close to this, learn how to adjust this. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for coming here today. I think this is a really great opportunity to have information exchanged back and forth and understand the any concerns, any questions that you really have. One of the things that I hear from the public a lot is, how did we get here, really? You know, how did a a large battery facility like this get developed here next to an environmentally sensitive area such as the Elkhorn Slough. And I want to give a little background because I think I probably know more about some of this background than probably anybody else. And it's really a long process going back over about 80 years is what's developed out of here. It really goes back to really 1946, and that is when the Army Corps of Engineers dredged the Moss Landing Harbor and opened it up so that it could be used more as a port and for opened up and the shipping possibilities. But there also was, at that point, discussion about utilizing Moss Landing as an industrial complex. In a few years, there would actually be put forth a plan, and it would be adopted to have the entire area from Moss Landing to Castroville and along the Elkhorn Slough to be about 3,000 acres of industrially zoned land for heavy industry. That didn't all come about, but what did happen is that there was some industry put in, and that's in 1948 is when PG&E established its facility out here at Moss Landing where it is, and in about 20 years later it would go through a very extensive expansion and actually would become the major source of energy for the West Coast. At one time, that power plant, which is known as Mighty Moss, actually produced more electricity than all the power plants in Los Angeles. It was, at one time, through the 1970s, the second largest conventionally fueled power plant in the world, second to one in East Germany. So in the midst of all that, you had this infrastructure developed, you had transmission lines with a electrical grid system that spread out throughout California and beyond, and plus you had the proper zoning. So as the power plant slowly wound down, it was a primary source, an excellent place to put, because of this infrastructure, for something such as this battery systems. And this is what really opened the door for this to come up. So I want to give you just a little more recent history here too on the background, and that is in 2017, actually it was May, let me get my dates here right, where is it? May 8th, 2019, excuse me. The proposal came before the Planning Commission in Monterey County to establish up a 200,000 square foot battery storage modules, and it was approved by unanimous vote and was not appealed to the Board of Supervisors because there was widespread support from environmental, business, and labor at that point. Nobody really brought up any opposition. That's what got where we're at started. In 2020, excuse me, there was a second expansion of about almost 400,000 square feet. That one actually also passed the Planning Commission unanimously, but it was appealed to the Board of Supervisors, which then also approved it. And this is where we're at right now. So I wanted to give that little bit of background for everybody to understand that this is really, this was selected as a site because it's been used for industrial, electrical production for quite some time, and it had the industrial infrastructure there for a battery operation. So, Kelsey, turn it back over to you and to our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think you should have a history podcast on a side note. So with that, we'll hand it over to Vistra Energy Corporation for a presentation on public safety, business safety plans, and mitigation measures.
Let's see if you can hear me. Good. Good evening, everyone. I'm Cynthia Vodapivic. I am the Senior Vice President for Environmental Health and Safety for Vistra Corporation. With me today, I have Brad Mashek, who is the Director of Renewable Operations. He helps run the Moss Landing Energy Storage Facility. So today we're going to, as Kelsey said, we're going to be going through what we have at our Vistra Moss Landing facility, what protections we have in place, and a little bit about Vistra. You want to go to the next slide? So just a highlight of Vistra and who we are. We're a Fortune 500 company located primarily, the headquarters is in Irving, Texas. We're located in 20 states, providing power and power generation and retail electricity in those states. Looking at the graph there, we generate 37 gigawatts of electricity, comprised of natural gas, nuclear, coal, and renewable energy. Go to the next slide. So where are we in California? Well, we have 3 locations in California. We have our Oakland facility up in the Oakland City Center there. There we have 110 megawatts of oil-fired generation. We're hoping to install battery storage there at some point in time in the future as well. Our Moss Landing facility, we have 1,000 units of 1,000 megawatts, 2 units of natural gas generation, the 750 megawatts of battery storage that we're going to be talking about today, as well as looking at plans for additional storage in the future. And then in Morro Bay, we have a former power plant location there as well, and that's another location where we're looking to add more battery storage. This might be a little bit hard to see from everywhere, but I'll try to go through it. This is just a map, an aerial view of our Moss Landing facility and the various pieces of generation that we have there. First of all, as was already mentioned, we've been a power generation facility since the 1950s. There's been clean, reliable power that's been generated at this facility since that time. The units in blue are our current natural gas units in the center there. We have 2 natural gas units, units 1 and 2. Those continue to operate and continue to provide clean, reliable power to the California grid. Our battery storage systems, we have 3 different phases in operation right now. Our phase 1 is a 300 megawatt facility. That was actually constructed within an existing turbine hall that was no longer used. So we were trying to reutilize areas of the plant that were no longer in operation. And we have 300 megawatts of battery storage in that facility. That went operational in 2021. We have our phase 2 facilities, which is a 100 megawatt facility, which was constructed in a warehouse. We actually built a warehouse on the property, kind of like a Walmart, you think about it with a concrete structure. And we have batteries lined up in that warehouse facility as well. And then just recently, this past summer, we just finished operation or construction of our Moss 350 facility. These are containerized facilities, containerized battery storage. We have 122 containers lined up on the property there, you can see. And that is our newest system, like I said, so it's in containers. Go to the next slide, Kelsey. The environment, and our company sites. And that commitment to safety is going to extend through the construction, the design, construction, and operation of our battery storage sites. We know that there's inherent but manageable risk in all forms of generation, in all forms of transportation and storage of energy, and that all energy sources have experienced events. At Vistra, we say that we like to learn from all of our events, and we apply those learnings, and you'll hear a little bit about that today. In lithium-ion battery energy storage systems, thermal runaway is a rare internal electrochemical reaction that releases heat, and it occurs when the voltage or temperatures inside the battery becomes unstable. Codes, rigorous standards, and operational best practices are leveraged. We use our best defenses, we use our best practices to reduce these risks, and we have 3 pillars that Brad will talk about next to make sure we have prevention, detection, and mitigation of any sort of system that's going to happen or any sort of event that can happen on our site. I'm going to hand it off to Brad, who's going to go through the design and some of the attributes that we have at our battery systems.
All right, well, thank you, Cynthia. Again, Brad Moshik. I'm the Director of Operations for our renewables facilities. We have renewables in Texas and California, and we're looking to expand into Illinois as well. So Cynthia led on with it. So we kind of have 3 pillars when it looks from a renewable and energy storage safety. We look at prevention, detection, and mitigation. On the prevention side, we want to make sure that we prevent incidents from happening. So we do that through rigorous engineering design, equipment selection by using Tier 1 providers. We perform hazard mitigation analysis and thorough emergency planning with our local representatives and emergency services. From a detection standpoint, we want to make sure that every one of our assets is well monitored. So we have extensive and elaborate battery management systems. These are systems that perform a lot of data calculations every second to bring in that information to the controls to ensure that we can have a safe and reliable product. Things that we're looking for is temperature, smoke, gas, heat. We use supervisory air pressure drops in our water lines to ensure and detect do we have any problems in our batteries. And then from a mitigation standpoint, trying to keep the defense in depth process in mind, we do have mitigation strategies as well. Emergency battery shutdowns are integrated into the battery management controls, the energy management controls, and the fire safety systems. We have ventilation integrated into our controls and into our facilities to ensure that we have adequate and timely ventilation of the facilities. And then in our case here at Moss Landing, we use water as one of our injection systems to help mitigate. In the industry, there's also other clean agent mitigation systems as well. Next slide. For us, for our 9540 Alpha fire protection system from our battery manufacturer, this is a quick little diagram. There on the right-hand side, you can see battery racks that are stacked. There is a piping system and hoses that connects to the back of every one of the battery racks that we have. On the back of our battery racks, there's a series of nozzles that would have the ability to inject water into the battery modules themselves. The goal of that is to, if a battery was in distress and was in a thermal runaway, early stage or in an incipient stage, that we can detect it and shut it down and deploy the water if needed. If the temperature was high enough, it would actually put the water into the distressed battery, cooling it off and stopping the thermal runaway in an incipient stage. This system is integrated into all three phases, so both the 300 megawatt, the 100 megawatt, and the new 350 megawatt facility, all with a very similar design that took a lot of learnings from other past events. Go to the next slide. This one here on the left-hand picture, you can actually see the manifold actually of nozzles. So in the back of every one of our battery racks, that manifold sits, and every one of those brass nozzles fits into the battery module itself. On the right-hand side, you can see a cross-section or a little better view of it on the side. What it has inside there is a fusible link. So very similar to what we would have in an overhead sprinkler system where it has the fusible link. If we had a fire, that fusible link would burn and pop, and then it would allow water in that area if we're in a public space. Very similar technology. If the battery was in distress and overheated, that little glass nozzle would pop, releasing the nitrogen in the line and allow water to come into that battery system. The picture in the middle is just an example of the fire valves that we have throughout the facility. We have quite a few pre-action valve systems that have fire water ready to go at a moment's notice. From the time that a trip signal is sent for the water, we have 2 minutes to deploy the water, and we're able to beat that by getting the water into the batteries at an appropriate time. We'll go to the next one. So we did have 2 events at Vistra at our Moss Landing facility. We had one in September of 2021 and February of 2022. The 2 events at Moss Landing facility were caused by water leaks that occurred from our mitigation system. Those water leaks led to grounding and arcing and localized smoke generation within the facility. Now, when the safety system was activated and water was sent, all the battery modules were operating in a normal condition. All temperatures were in the normal and expected ranges, and we didn't have any thermal runaway at that time. The events were contained to our site. We did not impact any air, water, or soil or our nearby communities. We worked closely with our regional water board to develop runoff water containment, sampling, screening, and handling procedures. And then when we were given approval for the runoff water, we discharged it in conjunction with our authorities. We did go through several corrective actions. We implemented those to resolve the water leak issues and enhance our systems for both detection and mitigation. So we'll list our corrective actions here. So prior to restarting our facilities, we did go through these corrective actions. We obviously completed all the repairs and recommissioning of the battery facility itself. Battery racks, battery modules, control systems, and fire systems were all repaired retested and recertified for operations. We replaced quick disconnect fittings with threaded connections. So the pipes that I mentioned earlier and the hoses that feed into the back of the battery modules were connected via a quick disconnect system. It's a brass connection, and those were the ones that were our primary failure point. So we took those, we eliminated every one of those in our facilities and have gone to all threaded couplings to ensure that we don't have any looseness in the system and that we have mechanical integrity. We went through extensive pressure testing of the complete heat suppression system with both air and then with water. We wanted to prove that we had a watertight system and that it was ready for operation should the need arise in the future. One key change is we changed our system from a single interlock to a dual interlock system, which requires both smoke and activation of the battery module sprinkler head to release water into our heat suppression system. Again, what that does is it makes sure that not just smoke can trigger it, but we have to have smoke and a loss of air pressure in our lines to ensure that we know that the battery is in distress and we need to send the water at that point in time. That should eliminate activation of the system by smoke that wouldn't be associated with the battery event that we have. And then another thing is we also went with installed smoke detectors on all of our air handling equipment in an attempt to shut air handlers down before if they had a mechanical issue before they issued put any smoke inside the building. Again, those lessons learned and those corrective actions were deployed in conjunction with our local officials. We spent a lot of time discussing, informing, and teaching all the first responders and ensuring that we had a cohesive response to the events. A little about our new facility, Moss Landing 350 or Phase 3. This is a containerized design, as you can see in both pictures there on the left. The batteries are contained in the bigger containers that you see there. Those are approximately 50 feet long, 12 foot wide, and 15 foot tall. Those are custom electrical enclosures that were built here in Kansas and shipped to site. The other device that you see just in front of it, the smaller one, that's an inverter. Again, that's just a key part of what we need to convert battery energy into grid energy. The systems that we installed, we installed both fire detection and mitigation systems in Phase 3, network alarm panels, smoke detection through a VESS system, which is a very early smoke detection apparatus. It's a highly sensitive smoke detector. Flammable gas and CO detection were also installed in every one of these. And our automatic water injection system was designed and tested for thermal runaway protection. We took the same lessons learned from Phases 1 and 2. We applied those lessons here, elimination of all quick disconnect fittings, full water pressure test to ensure that we had mechanical integrity of the system. I'll turn it back over to Cynthia to cover some of our emergency planning.
Thanks, Brad. So yeah, I'm going to just cover what we do for emergency planning and also show you some of our plume modeling results that we've shared with the community before. So we've implemented a robust facility emergency response plan for the power plant as well as the energy storage facility. Actually, Moss Landing has always, our traditional power plant has always had a very robust emergency response plan, and we amended that once we added in the battery storage. As part of the battery storage construction activities, we had extensive fire pre-plans that were developed prior to those operations for all three of the phases. We had numerous site visits from North County Fire Department and the various first responders that some of which are here today. We had training that we provided to the fire department personnel in 2021 and 2022. And that included walkthroughs, visual inspections, construction inspections, fire pre-plan walkthroughs, formal and in-class training on lithium-ion fires and the strategies behind how do you deal with those. And then walkthroughs and training conducted also in this past spring for Phase 3, which Brad talked about earlier. We also had some additional site, walkthroughs and tabletop exercises planned for the remainder of the year. All of our systems follow the National Fire Protection Association codes and the California Fire Code requirements, including hazard mitigation analysis, and those were all met prior to our system operations. So after the events that Brad described in 21 and 22, and after consultation with California Emergency Services and the fire department, We developed and enhanced our fire pre-plans. We updated the facility emergency response plan, and we performed plume modeling to inform the emergency personnel of potential off-site impacts based upon event variables. And those include smoke dispersion modeling, emergency evacuation plans, and looking at a hazard matrix. Those were all included into our emergency response plan. The dispersion modeling assumptions, we had a lot of consultation with independent battery experts and also our modelers who are independent. We modeled a thermal runaway propagation event, assuming worst-case system failures. Okay, so we looked at our MOS 100 and 300 facilities, and we modeled a fire that consumes an entire rack without any mitigation controls. So that means that our internal, water mitigation system doesn't work at all, and we don't detect this. For our MOS 350, which is the containerized facility, we assumed that the entire container of the battery was on fire, and again, no mitigation controls worked. So those are really our worst-case scenarios. The plume dispersion modeling was performed for both carbon monoxide as well as hydrogen fluoride, which are based on test reports and air sampling that, that's performed by the battery manufacturers while they're going through their testing to determine what are the potential contaminants. And as I said, we use third-party. Baker Risk was actually our consultant that we used to do our modeling. To do the modeling results, we looked at a number of different scenarios where ventilation of the modules was on and off, as well as different weather event conditions, looking at different wind patterns, wind going in different directions, different speeds, and different if it was steady or turbulent. Go to the next one. Okay. So again, I know it's a little hard to see, but these are the results of our air modeling effort. And again, this is worst case scenario. So this would only occur if our mitigation systems completely failed. And what we found, we did a various number of modeling events with all different weather events. And the only situation, there was only one scenario where we would have any ground level impacts of hydrogen fluoride. In all of the scenarios, there were no hazardous ground level impacts of CO. It was really just the hydrogen fluoride that we were focused on. It was just one situation. And so what we found is the California relative exposure limit could be exceeded at ground level, extending up to 1,300 feet, but only if, as I said, all of the controls didn't work, and if we have steady winds at 15.8 miles per hour, and that weather condition only occurs about 7% of the time. So, based on the modeling, we feel very comfortable. It's very rare that we're going to have any sort of ground level impacts, throughout the community. And just to point out the different graphs, again, I know it's a little hard to see with the plots, but the left-hand figure shows the area of influence of ground level of the HF. And that happens to be in our switchyard locations. That would actually remain on the site. On the right-hand side, we just drew a radius around to say, if the weather situation could change, where could it be? But it's very unlikely that you're going to have wind direction going out into the sea. And then on the next one, we also did a very similar modeling for our containerized storage facility, our MOS 350. And like I said, in this situation, we modeled an entire container going up. And same results there, very similar results, where it was only one weather scenario and with all of our controls not in place, where we would have any ground level impacts of hydrogen fluoride. And as you can see here, the green blob there is on our property, so that does not extend out into the community. If you draw your circular, your radius around, thank you, Kelsey, that would be, again, the worst case scenario. Same results here with the California relative exposure limit would only be exceeded if there were no internal suppression whatsoever, and if the wind was at 15.8 miles per hour or greater, which is a weather condition that occurs very rarely. If our system's work is designed, there are no ground level impacts. So this is absolute worst case. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Vistra Energy Corporation. And with that, we will hand it over actually to Pacific Gas and Electric for a 20-minute presentation regarding public safety, business safety plans, and mitigation measures as they pertain to the PG&E infrastructure.
Thank you, Kelsey. And actually, I just wanted to acknowledge, I was at an event this morning, and Kelsey and her team got an award from the United Way for their emergency response effort. So thank you very much. It was very nice. And Supervisor Church, Assemblymember Addis, and Senator Laird, as well as Chiefs Smith and Mendoza, thank you so much for having us. Thank you for hosting us. And thank you all for coming out and spending an evening with us. Really appreciate that. My name is Teresa Alvarado. I'm the Vice President for the South Bay and Central Coast region for PG&E. So my territory goes from Santa Clara County to Santa Barbara, and I spend a lot of time in this area, which I know and love well. And I'm joined tonight by Dave Gabbard. He's our Vice President of Power Generation. And he and I are joined by a few staff from PG&E. We have Dave, our facility manager. We have Sam, our environmental manager, and Stu, our public safety specialist for the region. So if you have any questions for any of us, we're happy to respond. And again, we are really happy about having the opportunity to speak with you again about the importance of the Elkhorn Battery Energy Storage System for customers in Monterey County and what we're doing to enhance emergency response efforts and communications. Oh, there you go. You beat me to it, Kelsey. So first, I'd like to talk about the facility itself and explain its importance to the region. So it's located at our Moss Landing Electric Substation. The system was built to support local capacity requirements and reliability, and now we learned about its statewide and even national significance, which I was not aware of. It was approved by the California Public Utilities Commission in November of 2018 and by the Monterey County Planning Commission in February of 2020. Site construction began in July of 2020, and the system began operation in April of 2022. The system was designed, constructed, and is maintained in collaboration with Tesla and is one of the largest utility-owned lithium-ion battery energy storage systems that exists. The system provides enough electricity to meet the instantaneous demand of nearly 275,000 homes. Next slide. The facility and the battery energy storage system housed at the facility serves as an important reserve of stored power that can quickly be dispatched to meet energy demand. It provides substantial savings for electric customers in Monterey County by providing additional local capacity and reducing PG&E's energy procurement costs, the power we need to buy from the energy market, over its 20-year lifetime. It also supports the larger grid reliability and California's decarbonization goals and climate resilience goals by storing power that is being generated during the day by renewable power and releasing it back when needed. So it reduces our reliance on power generated from fossil fuels. And it just enhances overall reliability by having this resource here locally. So I'd like to now hand it over to Dave Gabbard, who's going to talk about the incident and how we responded to it last year, as well as the enhancements that we've made. Dave?
Thanks, Teresa. Good evening, everyone. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the learnings that we've had in the wake of the incident that we had at our Elkhorn facility. As luck would have it, or randomly as it, today is the one-year anniversary of the event. We had an event at Elkhorn on September 20th, 2022. And while a lot of our design components to the site operated as intended, the fire was self-contained, did not propagate. It burned itself out and was safely managed on premise. There were a number of learnings that we had through the event that we want to share with you all today. Little background, in the event, we had 1 megapack burn, and it burned for the better part of 1 day and was managed locally. And in the wake of that event, we did a full root cause analysis with a third-party investigator to understand what we can learn from that event so that we can improve our operation on site and ensure safe and reliable operation going forward. In completing that investigation, we identified that the vent shield on the top of the unit had been incorrectly installed. What that resulted in is a notch in the unit actually was located at the wrong location. And so part of the vent shield, when it was installed on the roof of the Megapack, dislocated a valve and created a point of ingress for water. So when we had significant rains through storms, we had water that penetrated into the unit and ultimately resulted in a thermal runaway for that unit. In performing our investigation, we looked at an extent of condition, identified that that same mistake in fabrication of the unit existed in 88 other Megapacks out of the 256 located on site. So we quickly moved to repair all 88 and completed testing and retesting to ensure that that opportunity for water ingress was fully mitigated. We can go to the next slide. This is a representation of where the thermal runaway occurred. You can see the red unit at the bottom of the site, located in close proximity to several other Megapacks on site, but as designed, the thermal runaway did not propagate and grow into a larger issue. Different from our Vistra counterparts, on site, the fire mitigation strategy for our Megapacks is to self-burn and self-extinguish as opposed to introducing water into our electric infrastructure. If we can go to the next slide. Through our investigation, we've identified a number of corrective actions. First, from an engineering control standpoint, we modified the control scheme within the Tesla units. PG&E, in partnership with our partners at Tesla, have modified the units on site to be able to identify abnormal conditions and automatically discharge the energy from the unit in question to the adjacent units to eliminate the source of energy that could translate to a thermal runaway. We've also modified our alarm protocol and our posture for monitoring alarms at the site. We have 24/7 monitoring being performed by Tesla, looking for any abnormal conditions so that we can take quick action and avoid an event from occurring. We've also looked at our response capabilities. And while we partnered with our local emergency response partners in advance of commissioning the site, through the event response, we've identified some opportunities to improve that relationship. I need to commend my local emergency response partners for all of their efforts in responding to this incident and their partnership after the fact. We've been able to successfully align on more clear roles and responsibilities within our incident command structure and identify an approach for a unified command in a future event. We've also been able to engage the California Office of Emergency Services to bring our local agency partners and PG&E emergency response personnel together and train on the procedures for responding to a similar event. If we can move to the next slide. In addition, we plan to perform exercises and regular recurring training on an annual basis to make sure that our agency partners and PG&E personnel remain up to speed on our protocol for responding to an event. As a learning from the incident, we also completed smoke and plume modeling to understand the potential implications to the local community. In completing our modeling, we identified that only the area within the footprint of our Moss Landing substation, as well as the Vistra energy storage site, would be at risk for elevated levels of exposure. That said, we are working with the county and our agency partners to finalize that plume modeling results and have those available to our emergency response partners in the instance of a future incident so that we can inform real-time actions to maintain the safety of the community. Although there is, from the modeling, we do not see a risk to the local community, there may be instances where preventative measures like shelter in place are employed through an abundance of caution, and we will be looking to our fire and local agency partners to advise on that in the case of an incident. In addition to the 24/7 oversight from Tesla, we've also increased our staffing within PG&E, and we have on-site personnel at Elkhorn 24/7 as well to ensure that we can respond timely in the case of any abnormal operations. We've also leveraged the awareness out of our HAWK, our Hazard Awareness Warning Center, to be able to identify any adverse conditions and work through our public safety partners to communicate any need for local fire support or engagement from the county. If we can move to the next slide. Just a couple of specifics on the smoke modeling. I do want to call out that this is still in draft form and we're working to finalize, but this shows that we have taken a look at the results and put it up against the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency's acute exposure guideline levels, and that's how we've categorized whether or not there's an exposure to the community. And this is just reaffirming that the area of impact that we've identified for heightened levels of exposure are limited to within the footprint of the Moss Landing substation and Vistra site. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Teresa to talk about some customer communication enhancements.
All right, thanks, Dave. Just a couple more slides for us. So we really, we're happy to be here, and we are committed to providing timely, accurate, and consistent information to the community and our partners whenever a hazard is detected at one of our facilities, including Moss Landing. We use customer-provided contact information to communicate during emergencies through direct calls to customers, recorded messages, emails, and texts. So you'll notice in the middle there, I don't have my glasses on, I can't quite read it, but it does tell you how you can add your contact information to your account and enable us to reach out to you in the event of an emergency. So if you have not done that already, please do. It's a very useful a tool for us to be able to reach out to you. If a thermal event or an emergency at the site results in any kind of road closure or shelter-in-place orders, of course, those will be determined by our local first responders. We will swiftly communicate that with our customers in the area of the facility. And again, those ongoing emergency updates as an event continues and after it ends. So one more slide. And lo siento, no hablo bastante bien en español. Creo que el senador habla mejor que yo, pero sí puedo leer un mensaje. Reconocemos la importancia de proveer la misma información a nuestros clientes que hablan español y por eso hemos creado este plan en su idioma también. Gracias.
All right, thank you so much. Oh no. That's okay, I'll steal yours. Thank you. And with that, we will hand it over to Rick Encarnacion with the Monterey County Environmental Health Bureau regarding Environmental Health Bureau policies, procedures, and regulatory responsibilities.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, especially to our elected officials and our first responders and local staff people. It just goes to show just how very important this topic is with regards to what we are really concerned with here in the county. My name is Rick Encarnacion. I'm the Director of Environmental Health, your local health inspector. That's what I do. With me today is also Mr. Randy McMurray. He's in our audience. He supervises the team that conducts inspections for a program that we call Hazardous Materials Management Services. We, like I said, are the health department, and we issue permits and conduct inspections. We conduct inspections for many facilities and many businesses, restaurants, public swimming pools, gas stations, and in this case, battery energy storage sites, all for the purpose of protecting the public and the environment. Next slide. Oh, that slide's good. The Hazardous Materials Business Plan is a program that was established to prevent and minimize the damage to public health and safety and the environment from a release or threatened release of hazardous materials. It also satisfies community right-to-know laws. The plan requires businesses that handle hazardous materials in quantities equal to or greater than 55 gallons of a liquid, 500 pounds of a solid, or 200 cubic feet of a compressed gas, or extremely hazardous substances above threshold planning in quantity 2, next slide, that slide there, to inventory their hazardous materials, develop a site map, develop an emergency plan, and implement a training program for employees. A very basic program in a program that we also call around the state the California Unified Program agencies. Next slide. Businesses must submit this information electronically to the statewide information management system known as CERS, the California Environmental Reporting System. Once the submittal has been made, Environmental Health will verify the information and provide it to the appropriate agencies. These agencies include fire departments, hazardous material response teams, and local environmental regulatory agencies. Next slide. There you go. Monterey County Environmental Health, we also have a hazmat on-call team. Our on-call team provides advice and technical support to emergency first responders. Emergency response activities include mitigation, containment and control actions, as well as hazard identification, evaluating the threat to local populations and the environment. Next slide. So, in case of an incident, and we do this all the time, we do this almost every day when it comes to a spill, a sewage spill, fires, some of the general things that we do, and especially what we did here in these particular incidents. For smoke and off-gassing of hazardous materials, Environmental Health coordinates with first responders and local emergency department to establish evacuation orders or shelter-in-place advisories. We also coordinate with the US EPA to set up air monitoring equipment and update the county health public information officer. With regards to water runoff, massive quantities of water over an extended period is the established means of cooling lithium-ion batteries and preventing continuous thermal runaway, as you've heard. After an incident, Environmental Health ensures the water runoff is hauled off and properly disposed of, and tested and allowed to be discharged appropriately per state approval. With regards to soil contamination, Environmental Health ensures all soil impacted by the fire and or water runoff is tested and properly disposed of per an approved work plan. With regards to the removal of hazardous waste, all batteries affected by the fire must be recycled or disposed of as hazardous waste. Environmental Health ensures the waste is hauled off with a manifest by a licensed hazardous waste hauler and disposed of or recycled by an approved facility. And of course, we all do this through our inspections. We're there. We're your health inspectors again. You know, once the plant is built, we're your eyes and ears. And we ensure that through the health permit and through the authority that we have, we conduct what we need to do to ensure safety. And we partner with the people that we regulate to ensure that there's compliance. So with that, that's the end of my presentation, and I'll also be here for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. So we'll move on to item number 5. And I just wanted to take a couple of moments before we hand it over to Senator Laird and Assemblymember Don Addis to talk a little bit about what the Monterey County Department of Emergency Management is responsible for. So we are the local version of CalOES, essentially is the equivalent that I can really offer. And ultimately, we're responsible for planning and preparedness for all hazards, not any particular ones. So we look at earthquakes, liquefaction, flooding, tsunamis, wildfires, technological hazards, man-made hazards, terrorist events, et cetera. And ultimately, we are responsible for maintaining both functional plans as well as hazard-specific response plans. And so some of the ones I think that are more relevant to this particular hazard is obviously the Emergency Operations Plan, which is countywide and serves as the operational area guideline for countywide responses to large-scale events. But it also serves as a foundational document for our annexes, in particular the Evacuation and Transportation Plan, the Communications Plan, and the Care and Shelter Plan. And each of these plans are updated quite regularly. And then in addition to drafting and maintaining and owning several of the countywide response plans, we support our first responder agencies and other county partners in developing and maintaining response plans, such as the Environmental Health Bureau's hazardous materials and hazmat response plan, and provide general guidance and support for our partners in the private sector, in developing their plans as they pertain to the community and impacts to the community. And so we have played a role in supporting their planning efforts to ensure safety beyond the fence, essentially. And then the two other items that we are most known for are emergency alerts. So we are the administrators of the Monterey County Alert and Warning System called Alert Monterey County. If you have not done so, I highly encourage everyone to register at www.alertmontereycounty.org. And you can register your information for your residential address, your work address, school, grocery store, gym, what have you. And a variety of different communication mechanisms through cell phone, text message, phone call, landline, phone calls, emails, etc. You can also register for Nixle. And that is ultimately how we disseminate any emergency alert information and also any stand down information as well. And then finally, we are ultimately responsible for maintaining and operating the Monterey County Operational Area Emergency Operations Center, which is, for all intents and purposes, a large gathering place for all public safety agencies and county agencies with a responsibility to respond so that we can coordinate information and resources to effectively meet the needs of the community without duplicating effort or resources or missing any response opportunities. And so with that, that's a very high-level overview of what we do, but our commitment here is to provide preparedness information and connect the community with resources that they need in preparation for response and recovery to all types of hazards. So with that, we will begin to move on to our elected officials portion of the agenda. If you have not done so, please fill out your comment cards and take them to the District 2 table at the back so that we can collect them. And start answering questions, and we can organize them. So if you haven't done so, please do so now. And with that, I will hand it over to Senator John Laird.
Thank you very much. And let me just thank Supervisor Church and his staff, because these aren't easy meetings to put together, and I just appreciate it. And so many people here show the interest that it validates the reason that this is happening. And just a few thoughts. First is that last year, just a little before this time, a couple of weeks, we had this huge debate in the legislature about whether or not to extend the life of the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant. And at the heart of that debate was whether or not we had enough energy to meet peak demands in certain hot times of the year. And we had a real animated debate about it in the legislature. People were offering projections, and it's why do we cue our system to just a few hot hours that might happen 2 days a year and go through this debate. And then we adjourn, and the next day starts the 10 hottest days in California history, and it tested exactly what we had just been debating about. And one of the most interesting things that happened, and I don't think it has been widely written, is that in those key moments, battery storage across the entire state put more energy on the grid than the baseload of Diablo Canyon when it was operating. And so the battery storage installations everywhere, not just this and not just the local issue that we need to address here, were one of the key things that got us through that. And battery storage in the year since then has been expanded in California, where we're having trouble getting additional transmission and new energy on the grid, and this is one of the key places it's happening. So it is part of the solution if we can make sure that certain things about it work. And then, I guess it's a year ago today, I am scheduled to speak to the Monterey Board of Supervisors, and my staff texts me and said, Highway 1's closed in Moss Landing. You might want to leave substantially earlier and try to figure out how to get there. And that is how I was introduced to what was happening. And I think the interesting thing today, and I run the risk of characterizing it, is that we see great plans and we see great actions that tried to plan for this. And in many ways, they're internal, and the question is how do you communicate with the public? And I met with Port District people and other leaders in the months after who still had concerns that they didn't fully understand what had happened that day. And I am close to various people in Monterey, and one who was a planning commissioner said, you know, I sat in on those entire hearings. I was a member of the commission, and I'm not sure we ever talked about evacuation plans or safeties in those hearings, because it was all a matter of the state permitting or the other energy permitting, and when the local community was doing it, that wasn't involved. So when we came back to legislative session this year, they have this process where you come in for a ceremonial day in December, and all the new people are sworn in, and you can introduce one or two bills, and then we all come back and do the real work starting in the first Monday of January. And I would never usually introduce bills on the first day. They all seem flashy. I didn't need to do that. I just wanted to get down to work when we could. But I broke that rule this year, because on the first day, I introduced Senate Bill 38 with my one co-author, Assemblymember Addis, who was supportive, that basically said, battery energy storage facilities located in the state of California and subject to specified safety requirements have to have an emergency response plan, an emergency action plan that covers the premises of the battery storage facility. And further, I took amendments that said those plans have to be presented to the city and/or county in which that battery storage is operated or constructed. And it was my goal to have there be a statutory requirement to do safety looking outward that involves the community in the discussion before it is ever an issue. And that turned out to, much to my amazement, not be the assembly floor without getting a single no vote. And so when we adjourned in the wee hours for the year, the wee hours of last Friday, that was one of the bills that was sent to the desk of the governor. So it is sitting on the governor's desk, and he has a few hundred bills, and he has 30 days to sign them. I am hopeful, because of the strong support with it received in the process, and the fact that it doesn't cost a lot, which he has staffers that obsess about. And so I am hopeful that that bill will be signed, and then hopefully that will take a little bit of the issue off the table about making sure that there's communication with the community outward, that everybody knows exactly what we've heard in the presentations tonight as you consider it and do it. And I think for me, the lesson learned is just, you know, I would have hated to have been the chief in the middle of that, because, and I had the misfortune of being the Secretary of Natural Resources when the Oroville Dam spillway went, and you're just minding your own business one day and you get a phone call and you lose the next 2 weeks of your life to an emergency that you never know is how it's going to end. And so I think that it would give some peace of mind to the first responders to have a sense of how there's going to be that communication, what's in place, and that if the Port District says, is any of this water flowing into the slough, there's immediately ability to address those issues, because those were some of the issues and some of the questions that were being asked as this unfolded. And so I just look forward to, well, I'm hoping that bill gets signed, but I'm also just looking forward to working with the agencies in whatever way I can to make sure that people have some peace of mind that the questions are being asked and there are ways they're going to be communicated with that are understandable and timely, so that everybody feels that they know how they're going to be safe in all this. So I appreciate being here tonight and look forward to any questions that might come.
Thank you so much. And now I'd like to welcome Assembly Member Don Addis for comments.
Do you guys need to move around? You've been sitting for like an hour. I'm a teacher, so I'm always wondering if your eyes are starting to droop before I speak. But I will tell you I'm last, but certainly not least. And I want to start with another thank you to Supervisor Glenn Church and his staff for arranging this. Another congratulations to County OES. I was there this morning, but also worked with County OES during the January and March storms, and just want to applaud how dedicated they are to Monterey and keeping Monterey safe. And to my partner in the state legislature, Senator John Laird has really welcomed me in. You may not know, but I was just elected in November, and so while I'm new, you can clap. I saw someone out there. I'm newish to the state legislature, newish to this part of the Central Coast, but not new to battery energy storage. And so really where my perspective comes from is that along with Senator Laird, I represent 2 battery energy storage projects, the one here in Moss Landing that already exists, and the potential project in Morro Bay that is in the works. And so my lens on Moss Landing has always been through the lens of being on the front end. What would happen differently if I was in the planning part of things, which I have been. And just a little bit about me, I was on the Morro Bay City Council subcommittee, so on the council, but also on the subcommittee to redevelop the Morro Bay Power Plant, which has 3 stacks, not 2, like Moss Landing does, and looking at how to do that right. And so engaging quite a bit with Vistra and other entities around what battery storage could look like in the Morro Bay area. But I'm also a Morro Bay resident, which means I live within a couple miles of where a project could be. And so what that means for me as a resident, having children at the local high school, knowing kids that play on the local soccer fields, I really have a different kind of perspective of what it means and what I assume many of you in this audience are thinking about in terms of your proximity to such a project. And then finally, I was a teacher in the schools for 21 years, and through that experience had to conduct many evacuation drills around safety, of course not around battery energy storage because we don't have it at this time, but when we think about Diablo, when we think about earthquakes, when we think about active shooters, it's always on my mind, how are we going to keep children safe in these situations? And then how are we going to communicate with their families once we have those children safe? And so when I heard there was a shelter in place up here, that was immediately what was in my mind, is how is that communication happening and what's happening for families? And so I want to compliment everyone who came together today to get on the front end of this now for the community. And then now in the State Assembly, I'm on the Natural Resources Committee, I'm on the Ocean Protection Council, and along with State Senator Laird, we have formed a Central Coast Caucus with the focus of really representing communities like these, small cities, unincorporated coastal areas who need a voice in the state legislature. And I really feel like SB 38 comes out of that need for communities like ours who are on the forefront of solving the climate issues that we face, but need to keep us safe. And so all of that, I will say in summary, we've really had sort of 4 areas of focus in our office. One is climate action, another is ocean and estuary health, a third is coastal resiliency, and finally, as we're all here tonight, is about safety of our residents and our communities. And so after the Vistra smoke incident, which you've heard about quite a bit tonight, because I was on the Morro Bay City Council, I have to thank Chief Mendoza because I came up and we did an extensive tour of Moss Landing, and so was able to walk that facility and hear much of the information that you've heard tonight. And so after I got elected and started chatting with State Senator Laird, and he already had the idea around SB 38, but it was sort of in formation. What can we do? And before I even really knew exactly what was in the bill, and this is not what you should ever do as a legislator. As a legislator, you should never say, put me on that bill before you know what's in it. But I trusted State Senator Laird that he was going to do the right thing around safety for our communities. And so that's why I came on as a sole co-author, and I'm grateful that he has done the work really to get this to the governor's desk to make sure that, that we're doing the right thing for our communities. And so I will say this, I think Senator Laird did a phenomenal job, and Supervisor Church did a phenomenal job of explaining how we got to where we are today. Where California is going, where I'm seeing the state legislature going, where I'm seeing the governor going, where I'm seeing industry going, is historic investment in climate action, historic investment in lithium and environmentally safe lithium production, and historic investment in more battery energy storage projects and other kinds of renewable projects. But what that says to me is that we need historic effort in making sure these projects are safe, because our communities have to feel like when they're bearing the responsibility of climate action, they are also being taken care of. And so that's really the lens I bring here tonight. I'm gonna stop because I'm between you and getting to answer your questions, and I would say you're the most important people in this room. So thank you so much for having me. Thank you to PG&E and Vistra for all that you've done, and look forward to hearing what's on your minds this evening.
All right, thank you so much. So with that, we'll move into our public comment period. I feel confident that a majority of the, sorry. It's like, oh, no, I thought my tinnitus was acting up. You're good. I feel confident that the questions that were submitted online have been somewhat sufficiently answered, and so we'll move on to some of these comment cards while the District 2 staff collect the written comments. Oh, this is so fun. It's a basket. Oh, wow. Sorry. It just goes right in there. This is so efficient. Thank you. Do you want me to address these or just move right on into the... All right. Well, let's start with technology for 400. This is a lot. Okay. How do the PG&E Tesla batteries differ from the Vistra batteries? Oh, this is such a good one. And then the follow-up is, what was the hazard risk chemical that required community evacuation? Is it hydrogen fluoride, as in Vistra?
Good evening, everyone. David Pell. I'm the operations manager for PG&E.
Oh.
Sorry, better. Operations manager of PG&E. I oversee the Elkhorn battery facility for us. Starting with the first part, as far as the difference in our technology from Vistra's. At our core, they're both lithium-ion technologies. There is minor chemistry differences. We use a lithium nickel manganese blend. I will briefly lean over to Brad to let him say what his chemistry is.
Yeah, so just a different manufacturer. While the PG&E's is Tesla provided, ours is from LG, lithium-ion, nickel, manganese, cobalt. All right, yeah, so sorry about that. We'll use our own and not make everybody deaf. So ours is provided by LG. It's a lithium ion with the nickel, manganese, cobalt.
Yeah, the hazard risk was the hydrogen fluoride, and that was, again, it was done under an abundance of safety and caution for the community, but the,
Like at your face.
Yeah.
Yeah, there.
okay, sorry.
Nice.
Yeah,
Crushed it.
the hazardous chemical in question was the hydrogen fluoride. That was a joint decision between our first responders and those on site at the day, just an abundance of caution between us and the community. We wanted to make sure everyone was safe until we could have our air sampling in place and determine if there was any risk to the community.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Let's move on to the next one. This is a yes or no question, it seems. Did you do plume modeling before starting up the systems? I believe that's for both companies.
So for Moss Landing, we did the plume modeling after the Moss 100 and Moss 300 events, and that was in consultation with California Office of Emergency Services. They asked us to go ahead and do that. The plume modeling for Moss 350 was done well before construction of Moss 350.
And we did not perform plume modeling before the startup of the site, but we have undertaken plume modeling following the event that occurred a year ago.
All right, thank you. The next question is, all of your batteries came in via Dolan Road. How much does each battery weigh, and do you intend to repair or replace Dolan Road?
Yeah.
I think that one's supported by the community.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brad Watson, and I'm the Senior Director of Community Affairs for Vistra, and have been involved in the project since it went online in 2020. And I work with local governments a lot, so I know everybody up here, and Assemblymember Addis and I, we go way back since she was on the Morro Bay City Council, and we've been communicating and informing each other for well over 2 or 3 years now. So my job is to, yes, work with your local governments, including Monterey County. Regarding this question, I'll answer it in part, but designing, constructing, maintaining highways is not something that Vistra does. But I will say that, first of all, when we haul in major equipment on trucks the size needed for bringing in the batteries or bringing in the containers, we're going to use highways and roads that are Class 1 approved, either by Caltrans or the US DOT. So we're going to use roads that can handle trucks that size. I will say that when the Monterey County Planning Commission and ultimately the Board of Supervisors reviewed and then approved our 3 phases, we did have to do a traffic management plan. And that was reviewed by the county staff, it was reviewed by the Planning Commission, and ultimately the Board of Supervisors, and it was approved. It focused primarily on the number of workers who were there, which was over 400 for construction. So to the point of the question about damage and the route itself, that one I would have to yield either to the state or the county, really, if that's
I don't
helpful.
think anyone from Monterey County Public Works is here to comment. Thank you. All right, the next one is, what is the lifespan of a battery? How and where will you dispose of an expired battery? Where are the batteries made? Where do you get the raw elements to make the battery? Will Monterey County become a cemetery for dead batteries? And if so, can they harm the water table?
Wow. Let's see if I can remember all that.
I have it in writing.
Yeah. And by all means, y'all jump into where y'all see. So first of all, our battery plant is designed for a life of 20 years overall, but just like your cell phone battery, a single battery cell will not last 20 years and maintain the same output. So our battery life cycle plan includes augmentation throughout the years. About every 5 to 7 years, we will introduce additional battery storage on the site to maintain the agreements that we have, the RA agreements that we have with PG&E. There's a minimum floor for energy capacity that we have to have. So we will make sure we always meet that contract that we have with PG&E. As batteries age, if should any of them have a premature end of life, they will be removed from the site, they will be disposed of and recycled. There are recycling facilities throughout the United States. The one that we used as part of our event is just outside of Phoenix, Arizona. It's a company called Li-Cycle, and they do battery recycling of all kinds, but they do specialize in lithium ion. As we reach the overall facility end of life, our plan will be to remove all the batteries, recycle all the other materials, whether it be inverters, cables, transformers, remove it out, and have this facility ready for the next phase of whatever that may be in 20 to 25 years with the technology that comes then. Our overall plan is to not leave any batteries on site at all, and we would remove all of those and dispose and recycle of all those.
I'll add, we have a very similar posture, but we have a long-term agreement with our partners here at Tesla, where they are responsible for performing the capacity augmentation to maintain a similar output, as well as to dispose of any hazardous material and recycle the used batteries. So I'll just offer it up for my Tesla partners. Are any additional ads that you want to call out? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry, there's a couple of here pertaining to environmental impacts that I'd like to move on to. I can't read that handwriting, I'm so sorry. Okay, did the emergency scenario models take into account the near daily sea breeze and the persistent inversion layer that traps air in a shallow near shore air layer, i.e. fog? Is a report available to the public? And a thank you.
So I can answer that question. So as I mentioned, we had a very extensive air model that was conducted. It did use data from the Monterey Airport. However, as part of that data, they did look at inversions. They looked at all different types of wind events. There's someone smarter than me went through all this, but there's like 5 different categories of different types of wind, ranging from like a soft wind to very steady winds to like hurricane force winds. And all those were tested out throughout the model. And we feel as if the model did extensively look at all those localized conditions as well. Did that answer everything? Okay.
I'll just add one additional comment. We did all of the same, we leveraged our meteorology team looking back at historic weather patterns feeding into our plume modeling, but I do also want to call out that we are installing a weather station at Moss Landing substation to be able to inform real-time response in the event of a future incident.
Thank you. All right.
And we have one too.
Oh. Great. I love a quality gauge. All right. This is a fun one. Everyone loves talking about the Coastal Commission. Since Moss Landing is in the coastal zone, has the Coastal Commission evaluated and approved the battery facilities in Moss Landing? If not, why? If so, is the report available? Another thank you. Anyone from planning? Hey, come on up. Craig Spencer, everyone.
Good evening, everyone. Craig Spencer with Housing and Community Development. Sorry, here we go. Craig Spencer with Housing and Community Development. In Monterey County, we have a certified local coastal plan, which allows Monterey County to permit all development in the coastal zone, excluding certain things that are in the ocean or not certified as part of our plans. The Coastal Commission retains the ability to appeal to themselves or have appealed to them a permit. Neither permit was appealed in this case, so all the permits were done through the County of Monterey. And they were involved, the Coastal Commission was copied on all of the permits, plans, and resolutions during that review.
Great, thank you. All right, among my concerns is the concern for the slough and its inhabitants. Has an environmental impact report been conducted? And then the follow-up to that is, your EIR requires Vistra setback at 1/4 mile from parks and beaches, but I believe the battery units are closer than a 1/4 mile. Please explain.
Okay, I'm back. We did not do an EIR for this particular, for both permits we've issued. We did mitigated negative declarations, so we found that there were potential impacts, but mitigations were applied in the form of conditions that could reduce those impacts to a level that wasn't significant. Obviously, it was fairly new technology to us. We were coordinating with our first responders, our environmental health division. We were having the Vistra and PG&E develop plans. We thought we did a pretty good job, but we're learning as we go. But the ultimate environmental determination with the permits that were issued was what we would call a negative declaration, which is not an EIR, but it's a study that results in a finding that there isn't a significant unavoidable impact, which is when an EIR would be required.
All right, thank you. Let's see. Has any mitigation of sea level rise and flooding and earthquake been conducted? External sources of kinetic energy, damage to cells and/or safety equipment? So general hazard mitigation to the elements beyond a failure of the system.
I'll start.
Okay.
We do evaluate exposure to sea level rise as well as potential tsunami exposure being located on the coast. We do that evaluation for all of our substations and energy storage sites and power generation sites. For this location, we confirm the siting because it's located 38 feet above sea level, and we believe that the risk of that exposure is non-existent for our site.
Similarly, Vistra, as we studied the facility, we also went through tsunami, earthquake, flood. I'm trying to think some of the other scenarios. Yeah, sea level rise. And so we went through all those, and also our elevation is basically the same as the Elkhorn battery. And so again, all the findings were all low risk or no risk, and that's how we proceeded.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, sorry. All right, the next one is about soil contamination. Soil contamination is mentioned in the county's initial study. What is the contamination? What was tested for? Was it tested for radioactive elements? Was the soil taken to the household landfill at Marina or to a hazardous waste landfill? Okay.
So it has been a while now since I dug into this initial study, but there were some soil contamination issues existing at the site before the battery energy storage systems were to be built. So they did have to remediate some of those soils. I don't know exactly what was done with the soils. I can't remember those details. Maybe Rick can help me out, but that was part of, there was some testing and some remediation done. I'm sure that remediation was done in accordance with the conditions and the rules in place. It's been 2 or 3 years, so I'm a little fuzzy on the details, apologize about that, but I know it was addressed, and it was a condition that existed before the battery energy storage systems that had to be remediated before they could prepare the site for the systems.
Rick, you can just answer from the table.
Hello, everybody. Yeah, just to recap, like what I said, for every incident, not just for battery fires, but we do require in the aftermath of an event testing. I don't have the particulars on Randy's here, but we don't actually have the particulars on what was tested. But our response teams require a work plan to be submitted and approved, and then we follow through on that before any disposal of water or soil is done. So we make sure that that's all done with that particular concept. Anything to add, Randy?
Thank you. All right. The next question is, when there is a fire, how much dangerous particulates are released into the surrounding atmosphere? Where are you storing water? Where are you getting the water for the suppression? And how many fires, we're going to rephrase that to incidents, have occurred at Moss Landing facility? We'll start with Vistra.
Sure. Yeah, so we'll kind of answer it backwards. So we've had 2 events. Again, just to clarify, both of those were water events that occurred on us where the plumbing leak, the mechanical integrity was low. As we go through the other parts of the questions, what else did we have in there? So,
Oh, yeah, where's the water coming from for suppression?
so I'll start there. So we have local wells on site. We have water storage tanks and diesel fire pumps. And actually, our water system, from a supply standpoint, is actually integrated with the PG&E. So we actually have a shared facility between us to ensure that we have adequate water.
I actually have a follow-up question for you, which
Sure.
is, where does the water go when you are actively
Yeah.
suppressing an incident?
So we have a water collection system on site. All of our storm drains will collect the water, and we're able to valve that and keep it from any water leaving the site until it's tested and we're approved to release.
Great, thank you. And then in terms of smoke plumes, what types of, I think the heart of the question is, what types of hazardous chemicals may be in the air that could impact the community beyond the fence?
Yeah, and again, that was modeled, and we talked about that during the presentation. So there's 2 contaminants of concern with battery fires, with the lithium-ion battery fires, and those are carbon monoxide and HF, hydrogen fluoride. It's really only HF that could be the potential concern based on the modeling that we had.
Thank you, thank you. And then in terms of PG&E, number of incidents that have occurred on your side of the facility, please.
We've had the 1 incident a year ago.
Okay, and then I presume we've answered question number 2, but the final question is there any difference between your batteries and their batteries as it pertains to chemical composition that might impact the community through a plume?
I think the exposure is the same as previously communicated.
Thank you. All right. I think this one might have been answered, but I feel that the response could be quick. Why are lithium-ion batteries being stored so close to salt water?
So in general, it's not that we're trying to store them by salt water. The site's been an electrical generating facility since 1950. The site infrastructure made it unique in siting the batteries at this site, both from our site facilities as well as the PG&E transmission facilities. So it integrates very well to the site. But again, all the salt water and the fog and our local climate is all taken into consideration as part of our upfront design process to ensure our equipment will withstand that. Oh, and Brad will add on.
Well, a little bit of education to build on what Supervisor Church said about the site. Yes, PG&E built the plant. Actually, construction started in 1948. Harry Truman was president, and there were 5 units that were put up, and they were oil-based. So it's been involved in power generation since then. as Supervisor Church pointed out, there were actually land use management decisions that were made by the county back in the mid-50s. In his book, which I read on Humboldt, when Humboldt wanted to build that oil refinery there actually was a North Monterey County or a Moss Landing development plan in which industries would be assigned that part of the county. Regarding our facility, an energy facility, if you go back and look through the Planning Commission documents and how it reviewed our phases, it determined that energy facilities are appropriate for this area, which according to the Moss Landing community plan, the land use plan, designates that site as heavy industrial, all right? And also coastal dependent. It's coastal dependent because it is an energy facility. The key is the policy direction is that if a facility like this, industry, energy generation, or storage in this case, wants to expand, it is directed to do so on site. Try and do it on site where it's already zoned heavy industrial so that more industry is not out gobbling up more land. And so we're following what the land use planning policy is for the Monterey County General Plan, the North County Land Use Plan, and the Moss Landing Community Plan, which gives us and your local elected leaders and staff direction on how this land should be developed. So not only does it make sense by going to the heart of sustainability because all the power lines are there and the infrastructure to tie into the grid, but it also is within the collective wisdom over decades of policy decisions that this kind of facility should be expanded on site. That helps add some clarification.
Thank you. Super thorough. All right, the Vistra rep spoke of a 20-year lifespan for the BESS. What is envisioned for upgrades and or replacements?
All right, so in the 20-year lifespan, while we're talking about the current facility, energy storage facility we put in, again, those upgrades will be battery augmentations where we'll work on expanding the capacity to maintain our commitments to our contract. Post 20 years, I don't know that there's a wise enough person anywhere on the world to say what our true electrical generation mix is going to look like in 20 years. I think we will see continued expansion of storage, whether it's battery, flow battery, thermal, gravitational. There's a whole slew of technologies that are coming, and we're going to continue to explore those and find out which ones make commercial sense, which ones make siting sense for different facilities. But Moss Landing, with the transmission infrastructure and the designation of heavy industrial already, will poise it to be ready for that next level of whether it's storage or generation in the future.
Great, thank you. All right, this one is for you, Chief Mendoza. Do county firefighters and emergency personnel have training and equipment for lithium, hydrogen fluoride, hydrofluoric acid exposures, and battery storage facility fires and explosions? Nice.
Good evening, everyone. So the answer is yes. That was very long and a very long list.
Oh, here, I can do that.
No, the bottom line is that, both of these companies that are before you have actually done a great job of providing training for the local fire department. I can tell you when they first walked in with 11 engineers to my office, and I had only been on the job for about 3 months, it was quite overwhelming. And, we were truthful with the companies. We said, look, we're a small fire district. We don't have the resources to cope with something like this, so we need your help to ensure that we are going to have a plant that is going to be safe for our community, and we want to ensure that we're making all the right decisions and ensuring that all our California fire codes, NFPA recommendations are being used. So the answer to that is we have had the training. Fortunately, or unfortunately, to say, we've had the 3 different incidents, And in each one of those, I think you've heard from our other people here on the panel, is that we've learned every time we've had an event. And you know, we can do much better at what we're doing now. But I can tell you that every time we had an event, we sat down with each one of these companies, and this microphone is making a lot of noise. But we've sat down with each one of these companies, and we've gone over all the issues that, thank you, Kelsey. Oh, that's much better. Yes, so we've gone over all the issues that we've identified during our response, and we've gone item by item, looking at how we can improve our response, how we can improve our public safety. And I'm sorry, I'm taking a long time here, but I think this is really important to get out. One of the other things that I'd like to mention is that I am now very intimate with all these people that you see on this panel, because it's really, really important that we know each other. You know, Commander Smith, I didn't know any of these people before these incidents, but now I've got them on my phone, on my quick dial list, because we really do work well together, and it's been an ongoing process. And again, I hate that these incidents happen, but it's made your fire department and these departments work much better with each other, and we've learned a lot along the way. Hopefully that answered.
Thank you, Chief Mendoza. So the next one is about, given that the events were not due to thermal runaway, was North County's response to shelter in place asymmetrical to the risk to the public? Would North County respond to the same if there was a similar subsequent event? So before I hand it over to Chief Mendoza, I kind of wanted to address a couple of issues as it pertains to this question, which is that the incident that resulted in a shelter in place and the shutdown of Highway 1 was actually a incident that had thermal runaway and resulting in a fire. So that item, I think that at the time, given the lack of knowledge and understanding about the threat or hazard at hand, that the county's response, which includes the Monterey County Sheriff's Office and North County Fire, was commensurate with the risk at hand. And so one of the things that all public safety agencies do throughout any event is a initial size up and then a continual size up of the incident. So we operate on a system that navigates our response or modifies our response based on the threat. So you wouldn't necessarily send out a whole incident management team for a two-car collision per se. So we try to moderate our response based on the perceived risk and the understanding of the limited information at the time. And so throughout a response, we're constantly collecting new information, validating the information, ensuring that it's the most up-to-date so that decisions can be made effectively and efficiently, with the intention that if anyone is displaced from their home or required to shelter in place, that those decisions are made to lift an order or shelter in place as expeditiously as possible, and to do so in an effective communication strategy. And so I think Chief Mendoza really touched upon a significant point, which is that we're always learning. Whether it's this event or a wildfire or flooding, we are constantly reevaluating how to manage risk for not just county assets or critical infrastructure, but for the community as well, for life safety and property and environment. But I totally lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry. I got really excited about our priorities. And so with that, I'm actually just going to hand it over to Chief Mendoza and then to Chief Smith to provide any commentary on if you would do it again, would you do it the same way?
Thank you. So there was one critical element that was missing when we had this last event, which was actually went to thermal runaway, and that was the plume modeling or dispersion that we've been talking about. So I think it's important to know that we had actually requested that ahead of time, and had everything gone right, we would have had that in hand. And the response that we would have had based on that document would have been really, really different. we would have been able to share that with our sheriff's office, and the decision would have been made to essentially shelter in place the property that is just north of the PG&E site, and then most likely the property that is just south of it, which would be the Moss Landing Business Park. Additionally, the highway would have stayed open, and I don't think there would have been much impact just past the site on the east side. So the short answer to this whole thing is we would have done things differently. So now we have a plume model that is in draft form. We have a tool that we can use now. Our response will be different.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you. Yes, absolutely.
I just want to add real quick. First, I want to commend Chief Mendoza and his team for the response and taking an abundance of caution. Our intent at PG&E is to make as much information available as possible so that we can improve those responses going forward. So as we mentioned, we're going to be sharing the plume model details to inform future responses, but we will also be making any information that we get from the weather stations that we install at our site available to our public agency partners so they can inform future response.
Thank you.
And Kelsey, I'll add one thing. So Moss Landing is not the only facility we're looking at battery energy storage. So Texas and Illinois are also the other locations. We've also built it into our engineering standards that we're going to do plume modeling at every one of our facilities ahead of time. Again, that's that learning culture. From a Vistra standpoint, we want to make sure that we integrate those learnings into all our future projects going forward.
Thank you. The next question is, has the communication plan improved since the last fire when communication with Moss Landing Heighton was very poor? I think I read that correctly. I'm so sorry. So short of the long, I think, is that, and I'll continue to reiterate this until my retirement in like 30 years, 40 years, maybe 50, I'm unsure. It's a really long time from now. But we're constantly learning. And there is never going to be a scenario where every response is perfect. Nothing is ever going to go as it was planned. I think there's that old phrase of you write a plan and God laughs. And that is 100% true for my entire industry. So we do the best that we can to plan in advance with the anticipation that we will have to make decisions on the fly to best meet the needs of the community. And so with that, I think one of the comments that we've heard most frequently, not just this evening, but over the past year, was the need for improved communication. And we have really taken that to heart, not just with initial notifications through the alert and warning system, but through our overall communication strategy. And so we work quite closely with the Communications Bureau of the County Administrator's Office, but we also work quite well with our partners at Vistra and PG&E to communicate known threats and hazards beyond the fence. And so, as I said, it's always a learning opportunity, and we are always welcome to recommendations on how best to improve communication. So if you have more specific comments on how you would like to receive information or how you access information that maybe we're not aware of, you can either get a hold of myself or the DEM staff if you want to raise your hand, or the communications division, Nick Pasculi and gang. Thank you. All right. I think, oh no, there's a whole stack here. What time is it? 8:14. Thank you. That's super efficient. So we've got about 15 minutes left. Okay, this is a good one. What responsibility does the battery makers have on safety and safety monitoring and installation review? So I think I'm a little confused about this question, but before I hand it over to Vistra and PG&E, I do want to delineate that companies don't make the batteries, they buy the batteries. And so with that, I'll hand it over to you guys.
So sure, and I'll reference a little bit, the original battery manufacturer still has the ability to take the data that we have and continue to do data analysis with us to monitor the long-term health of our batteries. So they are a long-term partner with us to ensure our batteries are healthy. And ultimately, as we go forward, we will take the data and we'll make sure that all prudent decisions are made to operate it in the best way we can from a commercial standpoint and a long life standpoint, and to make sure we ensure safety along the way.
Sorry, quick follow-up.
Yeah, a quick follow-up, and that is that I visited a battery manufacturing plant somewhere else in the state recently, and the latest technology was to encase them so that if there was a fire, it just burned itself out without emitting anything, and it seemed like a development in the technology. Is that something that exists or might at some point exist with your battery storage?
So I want to talk to you afterward and find out who that was, because I want to go learn more about that. So we don't have exposure to that currently. So again, I want to explore that to learn. With the current design, we would have to evaluate what that technology is to see if it's applicable and can be modified on our existing systems. But we're going to continue to evaluate new designs going forward, whether it's new chemistries, and there's even chemistries that go out that leave lithium-ion behind, that go very different strategy. Or what can we do to modify and enhance ours?
All right, thank you. We are moving on to our If Time Allows category. So this is exciting, and I think general questions not pertaining to any particular incident. And the first one is, I see demolition happening at the PG&E power plant. What is happening, and are the two tall smokestacks coming down?
Kelsey, thank you for that question. Thank you, because I really want to say, first of all, headline, put it in capital letters, the stacks are not coming down, okay? Stacks are going to stay. So we've been batting this one down for months and months and months. What is happening at the site, and you can't miss it because it's right at the intersection, about a stone's throw from Dolan Road and Highway 1, is that the retired units 6 and 7 that were in service from the mid-1960s until 2016 are being demolished piece by piece because of their proximity to the intersection. We couldn't do an implosion, and when the whole thing falls over, so it's being taken down piece by piece. And it's being done by a California-based demolition company. You've likely seen perhaps a lot of water mist there. That is dust control for when we are either taking down parts of the turbine deck, or it is when we are literally taking apart piece by piece parts of the turbine that are about 2 feet thick. And the guys are in there using foundry torches that run on propane that burn at 6,500 degrees Fahrenheit to chop up this steel that had been part of the plant. So we're demolishing that. It's meeting all of its permits. Chief Mendoza has been out there because there were some calls to Supervisor Church's office about some dust or smoke complaints, and the chief went out there and did an inspection. And I don't want to speak for him, but I think that his conclusion was that it was being done per the rules and is necessary. Our plan is for the next couple of months for that heavy steel cutting to continue. We control that. If there are questions, just let me head them off about what's coming out of there. As far as any kind of emissions, we have air sampling monitors at the site and at the fence line that monitor all the time for any kind of particulate matter or any kind of emissions to make sure that everything is well within the standards. And the plan is to have the whole thing down sometime by the end of May. And then it will just be level there. But the stacks will stay, and maybe as long or longer than Kelsey's career, which is at 50 years and counting then. So.
It's a lifetime, so
Yeah,
buckle up.
there you go.
All right, we have time for 2 last questions, and I have somewhat pulled out, I think, the 2 most pressing ones. And we'll start with the first one. And I actually think Assemblymember Addis, you might be able to address this one. Your proposed installation in Morro Bay is being fought by local and statewide citizens group. Why are they opposed to Vistra's plan?
Well, it's hard for me to speak to, it's hard for me to answer for folks that aren't here. But I would say, as I think it comes down to concern around what the waterfront looks like, concern around what happens to the Morro Bay Power Plant, how it looks in the future, what it's used for in the future, and a lot of varying viewpoints about what we do with the community in general, in very, very broad terms. And there's a lot of different sort of ideas around land use that happen, especially when you have, and I think a number of people here have alluded to this, when you have a former power plant that's right on the water in a very, very beautiful part of the California coast. So that's sort of, without trying to project what other people are thinking, that's my impression of it.
Thank you. All right. And then the last one, and this one's somewhat of a doozy, so I apologize in advance in terms of length. So based on the expansive lists presented here tonight regarding emergency backup plans, acute exposure guidelines, and customer communication guidelines, I get the feeling this battery storage system has enormous potential for grand-scale catastrophic failure with far-reaching, long-lasting impact. Is this the case?
We'll arm wrestle who goes first. So from a widespread catastrophic event, we don't forecast that to be the case. The modeling and the design that we have, again, goes back to the prevention, the detection, and the mitigation, right? Engineer it right, procure it right, build it right, test it right. Then we operate it right, we ensure that we maintain it right, and then we will be able to limit failures in initiating events, make sure we're prepared for an initiating event that might occur, to detect it early, and have mitigations in place. Again, that water injection system that we have is specifically designed to limit thermal runaway propagation. Again, limit to a single battery module, cool it off, and in the event, in the incipient stage.
Thank you.
And I want to echo that. First, I want to say that the safety of the community is PG&E's #1 priority. And so I think you can see by the actions we're taking, the collaboration that we are employing with our agency partners to only become better are rooted in that commitment. We've seen from these recent incidents that they were not catastrophic and that they failed as designed, but we're not resting on those laurels. We're looking to be better so that we can continuously improve our safety posture, learn from these events, feed those learnings back through our OEM partners so that we can enhance future designs and modify our operation protocol and our emergency response procedures so that we can continually operate a safe site.
Can I have one more thing to give you a high-level perspective here? Just to touch on what Senator Laird had mentioned about last year. During that 10-day Flex Alert period from August 31st to September 9th, there were 4,000 megawatts of installed batteries in California at that time. In the last year, there have been more installed, and we are now up to, let's see here, we're now up to 6,800 megawatts of batteries in California. That's enough power for 5.1 million homes. And those batteries are charging and discharging every day. And how many incidents do you hear of the tens of thousands of megawatt hours that are being released to your grid of clean energy? How many incidents do you really hear? So it's just important to look at high level at how well they are operating overall. Are they perfect? No, but no system created by humanity is perfect. But they are operating very well. They're safe, And there are not catastrophic events. There are manageable risks that the industry is addressing and getting better every single day.
Thank you.
Kelsey,
Yeah, go
could I
ahead,
add
Rick.
something? So with regard to the question and catastrophic events, just in terms of county services, I think what we also want to emphasize, what we're trying to do here is all about planning, notification, and coordination, and that won't stop. And I just want to emphasize that in terms of county services, because in terms of catastrophic events, not just battery plants, but in our county, there's many things that we do every day. Fire, sheriff, environmental health in particular, also, because just speaking from environmental health, we address issues with the ag community and how they handle their ammonia, for example. The gas stations and how they handle their waste tanks. The farms that produce the food and foodborne illness. So with respects to catastrophic events and what may be present in the county, you can rest assured that what we're doing together, we're here in this room to ensure that we're planning, coordinating, and making sure that there's adequate notification. And thank you for those new laws, because this is emerging use, an emerging use of technology. And just speaking for environmental health, all of the directors up and down the county, up and down the state, we realize that these are batteries. And right now the laws kind of need to catch up on the use of batteries, because these are batteries, the same batteries that are in your phone. So, but we just have these batteries in these large amounts. And how they're going to be used, that's what we're here for in terms of county service. Again, to ensure that there's adequate planning, notification, and coordination. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. And to make some final closing comments on this last item, to be quite candid with you, I was where you guys are at emotionally, mentally, angry, frustrated, scared, about a year ago. Cynthia's nodding her head because she got the brunt of my anger. And so I share your concern and I share your frustration about change and new information. And what I will say is that these two companies, they're also learning. They're also changing their operations based on new information that arise from these incidents. But at the very heart of their operations, and I will corroborate this, is that they're here for your safety, and they're here with a mission to provide sustainable energy, but to also provide it in a safe manner. And so they are constantly and diligently reevaluating how they are conducting their operations, and they are eagerly addressing the county's concerns as well. And so I have grown to appreciate their communication and diligence over the last 2 years, and most especially Cynthia. Thank you for answering all my very angry phone calls. And so with that, I do want to adjourn this evening, and I want to acknowledge the AV guys. You guys crushed it. Way to go. And I want to thank our elected officials, our county department heads, our public safety officials, and our partners at PG&E and Vistra for their engagement today and their honest conversations. And I want to thank you all predominantly for your commitment and passion for your community and public safety in your community. So thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for your questions. If you have any additional questions, please notify District 2 staff. They are here to serve you, and they are anxiously awaiting your phone calls and questions. Thank you, everyone.